It's not a pretty picture.
They carried me out of the high school in handcuffs. There was about 15 officers, including several that were in tactical equipment. I mean, it was a pretty large, what's the word, spectacle. It was a huge spectacle, you know what I mean?
This is a special edition of Jim Bratton Podcast Series, Volume 1 of Locked Up.
Hi, this is Jim Bratton, and this is Jim Bratton Podcast. And today, we're talking to Robert Serna, who's a friend of mine and a successful business owner, and a past story that many of us don't know a whole lot about. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Robert, you spent 3 years in the various aspects of the Texas penal system,
Yes, sir.
and you have agreed to talk very candidly with us about that.
Absolutely.
And by the way, full disclosure, we talked about, I'd offered to not use your real name, to use a voice disguise or anything, but you're willing to step right up, and I'm impressed by that, and I know there's some personal risk to it, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I'm going to let you tell your story, but today we're going to spend 10 or 11 minutes on, what, shall we start with apprehension? And you tell it the way you want to. You've got a sequence in your mind that will go on this. So let's talk about it.
Well, the apprehension side of it is that, I have to preface this with I'm an ardent supporter of law enforcement at this point. I absolutely support our boys in blue. However, the way that investigations can be approached sometimes in the way that I interpreted my arrest and apprehension seemed almost predatory.
Uh-huh.
I was arrested in December of 2002.
Right.
My senior year of high school, they carried me out of the high school in handcuffs. There was about 15 officers, including several that were in tactical equipment. I mean, it was a pretty large, what's the word, spectacle. It was a huge spectacle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm in the back of the cop car, the whole time I'm in the holding cells, the whole time I'm in the interrogation rooms, they're telling me that I need to speak before a lawyer gets there. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to go to the DA to try to help me. Looking back, I was at least smart enough to know that that's not what I needed to say. That what they were asking me wasn't in my best interest, but they really pushed that to me, and that I was 18 years old. Most 18-year-olds don't know any better, and they're going to go with what they're saying, and I feel like it's borderline entrapment. It was absolutely. Looking back, I would have had different words for him. I just kept quiet, but looking back, I would have spoken pretty directly and pretty, aggressively at it.
Right. Are you willing to say what the nature of the crime, what it was?
I was originally arrested for the crime of aggravated robbery. And I gave inside knowledge and firearm to a gentleman who committed a robbery. At the time, shortly before the robbery was committed, Texas passed the Culpability Act, which basically eliminated the term of accessory. At that point, if you had any involvement in the felony, you were guilty of said felony. So I was not even at the robbery when it occurred. I was nowhere near it, and I was arrested on the charge of aggravated robbery. I ended up getting a 3-year sentence with a plea deal. The gentleman that did the robbery actually received 6 months probation.
I'm stunned. Shall we say out loud that there is a difference between he and you?
Yes, but I don't think that the difference is what you were thinking.
Okay.
Yes, I am obviously as Mexican as I like to be, and he was not. He is a Caucasian male, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was money.
Okay. This is socioeconomic as opposed to racial.
I don't believe it's racial at all. Where it gets tricky is that unfortunately the socioeconomic hardship tends to apply more to people that look like me, people that are people of color, as opposed to.
And you're calling that a coincidental.
No, I mean it could be systemic as well. Yes,
Systemic, however,
in this,
the money is the issue.
The money is in my opinion, everything I learned about the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and the penal system in Texas revolves around money. Everything.
Let's talk a little bit about, okay, you're pulled out of school. Tactical gear, 15 people or so, some in tactical gear. What happened next?
I went down to central booking in
This is in Houston.
yeah, downtown Houston, the main police office. And
That's okay.
they immediately stuck me in an interrogation room and began to question. Once they started questioning, it was high pressured. You got to talk now, or we're not going to be able to help you make a deal with the DA. Which, again, at the time, I knew I wasn't supposed to say anything, but had I not known that, could have easily incriminated myself
Quickly.
And it was high pressured. If you get a lawyer, we can't help you. Which, looking back now, I know that the investigating officer has no say so in what happens in the courtroom whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's all, like I said, it's very predatory. And I'm not saying I didn't deserve any of what I got. What I am saying is that I don't believe that is that takes integrity out of law enforcement, as far as I'm concerned. Like, those investigating officers should be, look, you have the right to an attorney, and when I asked for one, not tell me that I don't need that. If I wait for one, I can't make a deal, because that's just not the way the system works. And so
And this is along with you supporting law enforcement.
now, yes, I still support law enforcement. Not all, there's bad apples in every group of people, and the bad apples in law enforcement bother me more than most. But I know some phenomenal men and women that are police officers and in law enforcement, all the way up to the federal level, that I would lay down my life for in a heartbeat. They're the best people I know. And then I know some people that shouldn't be in law enforcement.
Right.
So I'll never disparage law enforcement as a whole, but in that instance, and what I saw as far as the investigation going, and other inmates, there's some really, really underhanded tactics in regards to getting convictions on what I would call lower income people.
Let's walk through the process now. Most of us, many of us have a family member or know of someone who spent time in the penal system. However, most of us are not very familiar with what happens when. Can you slowly walk me through? Okay, interrogation room. That's one. And you elected to not communicate openly at that time, despite what they said.
Sure. So the short of it is, immediately once they figured out that I'm not talking, I'm not going to cooperate, I stood in about 3 different lineups, and more for a filler while they were trying to pick someone else out. They had me stand in several lineups so we could pick out for someone else's crime. All right, have to fit the bill. But once you get out of city, you get transferred to the Harris County Jail, and I spent 3 days in holding. And from one holding cell to the other, people sleeping on the floor, defecating, urinating on the floor, while they process you into going to an actual tank in the county jail.
So this is incredible to me.
It wasn't incredible back then.
No, I mean, you see, had you ever imagined that you would find yourself in that kind of position?
No, I always kind of I hate to say I was very reckless and arrogant back then, and I probably should have seen something like that coming, but at the time, no, I didn't. And even if I had thought that I might get incarcerated at some point, I just always assumed it would. I never assumed I would be sitting in various concrete rooms for 3 days with eating, bologna sandwiches, with, not being able to shower, not being able to use the bathroom in private before you even get into a county uniform.
When you say can't use a bathroom in private, tell me.
Oh, there's just there's a toilet and a sink in the corner, and that's what you're using with about 50 other guys.
You've agreed to have this conversation. Sure. How hard is it I'm watching you closely, okay? This is...
You'd be surprised how quickly you get used to it. It's amazing how quickly, at least I did. I don't know that everybody does, but I mean, you adapt very quickly. When you don't have a choice in a matter, you're just going to adapt, you know what I mean? And you figure it out. And I was also at the time very arrogant. So I was under the impression that nothing, I got this, I'm going to get through this simple. And obviously I did, but not without its challenges.
3 days there.
3 days there, then you go up to your tank, which was basically, I used to joke that it seemed like a criminal summer camp, just a whole lot of bunks in one room and 2 TVs on the wall. And you're in there all day. You can't see the sunlight. You're just in this tank unless you have to go to medical, or you want to go to church, or you want to do anything that you have to request for.
Another toilet in the corner?
3. on one side of the wall. No, nothing to cover you with or anything like that. Just out in the open. And the shower too. No shower curtains. Just a shower in the corner.
Tank from
Yeah,
there.
and
From there.
From the tank. I mean, I went through various tanks. Unfortunately, I got in several altercations and was moved into different tanks. As every time you get in trouble, they ship you to a different tank.
And you got in trouble.
And I got in trouble a lot.
Okay.
So that was December 2nd, 2002,
Right.
when I was picked up. On March 6th, after 5 court dates and resets, I agreed to a plea bargain of 3 years for the crime of simple robbery, non-aggravated.
What's it like when you go into the courtroom?
You're in a holding cell full of other guys in orange, and you meet your lawyer through a glass. And I honestly did not set foot in the courtroom until I pled guilty on March 6th.
So meantime, your lawyer is an errand boy going back and forth.
Back and forth. The first time I went to court, they offered me 35 years.
The fuck?
Yeah, they said they said if you plead guilty, they'll give you 35 years. And I told them, no, you're gonna have to give it to me. Like I absolutely will not take 35 years at 18 years old. And so, but
Your attorney was court appointed?
no, my attorney was a close family friend, Lewis.
Okay, so you had
Yeah.
what you considered good
Counsel,
representation.
yes. And that goes back to the socioeconomic thing. A lot of the guys that I was in with had court-appointed lawyers that pushed them into deals where they were taking 20 and 30 years for their first offense at 18, 19 years old.
So you have a court appointed that just sort of punches in, punches out, and takes the fee.
They push these deals that these district attorneys are pushing. There was a statistic when I was incarcerated that said that that if you were outside of the jail, you were 70% more likely to beat your case and not be incarcerated. But if you were inside the jail, there was 100% chance you were going to serve time in the Texas prison system.
What a statistic.
Yeah, it was incredible, and not in a good way.
So, 3 runs? Your lawyer being messenger 3 times,
3 separate days.
3 separate days,
Yeah.
And then finally in March, after being incarcerated, and once again, you're in a group cell all this time.
Yes. And that doesn't come with without its own set of challenges. I mean, we're fighting.
I was going to say I'm going to say this is not an incredibly stable bunch of folks that you're hanging with.
Fighting and pepper spray and I'll say it out loud. Some of the guards in the Harris County Jail at the time were more aggressive than the inmates. It was different when I went to TDC, but the guards in Harris County some of them were absolute brutes, absolute sadist. I mean, this
was a chance to work that to do that in a legal, uncovered manner. Then,
so like I said, I went in and I agreed to the plea bargain deal. I signed the paperwork, and then I had to go stand before the judge and plead guilty and make a statement if I chose.
Did that take time?
No. Once I signed the paperwork, I was in front of the judge in 10 minutes, and then I was back to my tank within an hour.
Okay. 3rd time, March 6th. In front of the judge. Did you give a statement of some kind?
No, I actually joked with my lawyer if I was going to say free Tibet. And he said, I don't understand. I said, I want Tibet to be free from Chinese oppression. And he kind of looked at me. I said, I'm joking, Lewis. I'm not going to say that. He goes, I'm going to advise against it. I said, I got it. I just honestly, just at that moment, knowing that I was taking a 3-year sentence, I was trying to make light of something. You know, it's an awful day at 18 years old to realize you're going to go to prison for 3 years.
I'm trying to empathize. I mean, I'm trying to understand, but you're going to have to explain it to me. When the judge gave you that 3 years, was it the gavel came down and
no, didn't lift up the gavel at all. Do you accept the terms of your plea bargain? I do. I sign. You're good. Have a nice day.
Wow.
It's transactional, which makes it even sadder in regards to our justice system.
Assembly line.
That they're handing out years in prison transactionally, like it means nothing. And like I said, I was fortunate. I took a 3-year sentence. I know guys that, 18 years old, they're doing 40 years.
For a first offense.
For maybe not their first offense, but not many offenses.
Right. Not a career criminal.
Exactly.
Well, hell,
and
young, how could it be a career
and
criminal?
they might have been on their way to, but who are we to say? You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's a sad thing.
Okay. Escorted from the courtroom.
Back to my tank.
back to the tank.
So you sit in the tank with some, and again, this is 20 years ago. I don't know how.
Right.
Yeah.
Our listeners understand that this is 20 years ago.
When I got back to the tank, everybody, there's a bunch of criminal kids that are sitting, oh man, everybody better be tough. You got to go down there and fight everybody, and everybody talking about what you should do when you leave. I did not leave for TDC until March 28th.
Okay, so you're in the tank all this time in this group cell,
waiting to catch chain.
And then TDC,
they make an announcement over the intercom with your name and your identification number and say you're on the chain.
When you say you're on the chain,
it's just a slang word for you're going to the TDC.
Is that carry over from the chain gang?
Probably, or just the chains that you were, because they shackle you, feet, arms, all the way around during the
transfer.
During the transport, yeah.
Had you ever been in shackles before?
No. And so when you catch the chain, you're not allowed to call anybody.
Okay.
Because they have this. They used to say that they didn't want you. They couldn't let people know that people were being transported, so someone would try to hijack. This isn't a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. This is TDC. We're basic criminals. But so they drag you. They bring you out of the cell pretty quickly because they don't want you calling somebody.
Right.
And then you sit in a tank all night long. In a TDC jumpsuit. They give you just a onesie kind of thing.
But you're not shackled at that stage?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
And you're just kind of waiting.
And you're in a solo cell?
No, you're in a group of about a bus full.
Okay.
It's a bus full.
A bus full, a bus load. Yeah, that's actually, is that a white bus?
Yeah, it was a white, that was called the Bluebird.
Yeah.
It was the Bluebird bus.
Bluebird, yeah.
And so you just wait there to get to, fortunately, I got very, very lucky. I knew a guy that was on the bus with me from the free world. And so he and I, made a bond kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Right.
And we waited and we took the chain. And, the next morning I was on a bus to Tennessee Colony, Texas.
On the bus, were you shackled at that?
100%.
I'm just going to ask you this, and if this is too rough, you gotta tell me, okay? But what was that like? I mean, I just can't even imagine what that felt like as they put them on you.
It's I didn't really have feelings about it until you get off the bus.
Okay.
I knew all of that was coming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've been in the county long enough, and I've talked to enough guys that have done time already. It was that's all part of it.
Yeah.
The great unknown and the hard part was getting off the bus, because you hear so many various accounts of how this is going to go. You don't know what's going to take place. I was an 18-year-old kid. So the putting them on didn't really mean much. Taking them off after the bus is when it was more of an impact.
The bus. And you went to, where'd you say you went?
The Gurney unit in Tennessee Colony, Texas.
Okay.
And that's what they call an intake unit.
You come off the bus and you've been in this, what's that? Is that a several-hour run?
It's about a 4-hour bus ride.
Been in a bus for 4 hours. You step out shackled. You step out, the door opens, and you file out into the light?
The bus is open, so it was still light.
Yeah, but you file out into the outer doors.
Into an open rec area type thing. And I remember the guard said, "All right, guys, you missed lunch, but if you act right, I'll make sure you get a Johnny." And I remember being 18 years old going, "I don't know what a Johnny is, but I don't want one." Like, that sounds terrible. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Johnny is a sack lunch. Apparently.
Okay.
But looking back, also it's humorous. If you act right, I'll feed you. No, that is absolutely atrocious to use your behavior as a gauge as to whether you get fed. We're still humans.
What an equation.
Yeah.
So you missed your lunch?
Missed your lunch. They gave me a Johnny.
Okay, a sack lunch.
I don't know why they called it a Johnny, but a sack lunch in TDC.
Okay, now walk me through what happened next.
At that moment, you got to get comfortable being naked, because you're going to get naked a lot. You get strip searched about 4 different times between the bus and actually entering the unit. And
is this like a hallway?
One was a hallway. One's what they call a sally port, which is basically just a hallway in between a hallway. And you shower, like I said, strip searched again 4 different times, and then they shave your head. As soon as you get in, they shave your head.
So all this is depersonalizing you.
And then they tell you your number. They give you your little bleach bar of soap and give you a mattress, and guard escorts you to where you're going. Now, bear in mind, this was what they call an intake facility. So this is where they classify you to decide what type of unit you're going to.
So once again, this is sub-distribution point.
Yes. And so once we get there, you're in a tank again.
So do you carry your mattress over your shoulder?
Yeah, you tie the sheet and use it as like a crossbody purse, but kind of like a crossbody purse. And
I've got this pic. Is my image right of a bunch of guys? Were you still naked at that time?
No. By this point, you're in your whites.
You're in the whites, okay, and you're walking down hallways, etc.
Sorry, this unit was outside. You're walking all the walkways and the gangways were outside, and you had buildings that you would go into, like where you slept and where you went to school and where you did medical and everything else.
Yeah.
But so we're walking down this, and this walkway, escorted, and okay, you're in this tank, and like I said, because this is intake, it's tanks again.
Yeah, okay.
Which was not expected at all. I was honestly expecting.
You expected to go to a cell?
I was expecting tiers and a cell. What you see on TV.
Oh yeah, multi-story and doors and
none of that. It was. So you get
you're still all ground level.
You're still all ground level. So you get there and you're just man, you got to kind of just figure it out. Fortunately, my buddy Jerry was the one I was telling you about. We ended up in the same tank, and I hate to say, we posted our flag at that point.
I understand.
And
sort of.
Yeah. So we made it known who we were with and who we were trying to represent. And they approached us and said, "Hey, you with us?" Yeah. And after that, they set up the check-in, and the unit TDC's procedure in that is they're classifying you. You're doing psychological evaluations, you're doing IQ tests, you're doing medical examinations, and they're deciding what type of inmate you're going to be when you've been in here for a few days. And then at that point, they'll decide where to ship you.
So they classify you.
And
this is based on everything from the crime to your intellect to your behavior. They do a few psych things along the way too.
The whole time. I think 3 different psych evaluations, an IQ test, an aptitude test, mechanical aptitude. I mean, there's a lot. I will say, in that moment, I did feel like they were genuinely trying to find out who you were going to be. Looking back, I think it was just it's all a fugazi. It's all a farce. They're just making it look good. They don't care who you're going to be. You're just another number.
So once that sort of track is decided, what happens then?
For me, initially, I should have stayed most of my time on the gurney unit, because there's no point transferring a 3-year sentence who's going to be up for parole in 6 months to
from a great logistics viewpoint.
Yes, it doesn't make sense. So I actually started going to school. I started taking a welding class, and also,
meanwhile, you're still in a tank.
I'm in a tank. Yes. So in a tank with, a bunch of guys with no doors on the showers or the toilets. You know what I mean? And so I did that for 6 months. No, it wasn't even 6 months. It's probably about 3 months. And then I was a disciplinary problem, getting into fights. Got into a pretty good fight in the infirmary the day after my 20th birthday in August. And I went to I became what they call close custody, because that was, my however many offenses. And so close custody is maximum security. So I can no longer wander the unit or go to different places in the unit. At that point, I am in a back corner of a building that's dark, no windows, with all the other guys that are close custody and maximum security. And they do not keep those guys on those units. So about 2 weeks later, they transferred me out.
So you got in trouble?
Oh yeah, quite a bit.
Tell me about that.
I was an angry individual at the time. I honestly, I embraced the gang lifestyle. I did. I embraced it. I joined a gang, and me and the homeboys, I loved it.
That gang recruitment happens immediately then.
Yes and no. I mean, at the intake unit, not as much. You have to really put it out there that that's where you're going, that's what you're doing. At least at the unit I was at. Now, once I hit my actual home unit, which was an actual prison, it was immediately the minute I walked through the door.
All right. So that got you, you had some disciplinary issues. Just you're in the corner or whatever you would call it.
Like a basement. If there was, like an above ground basement.
So that means that you get shipped out then?
Yes, sir. So they shipped me out to what at the time was called the Bird unit. Prior to that, it was diagnostics unit, but that is the classification unit. That's where once you leave the intake facility,
Yeah.
you go to that unit. They decide where they're going to send you.
But that's still, you're still same premise, same.
No, this was cells.
Okay.
Well, at least for me, because I was close custody. So I was in a cell for 23 hours a day. I only got to come out to shower and to eat for 8 weeks.
Single cell,
Double man cell.
double man,
Smaller than the room we're sitting in right now.
which, by the way, is a fairly small conference room.
Yes. And so I waited there for that. And about 8 weeks later, I caught the chain again. And I ended up on the Ruben M. Torres unit in Hondo, Texas.
Hondo.
Which is actually not a maximum security unit. So when I got there, they moved me from close custody to medium custody. They reduced my rating. And what that meant was 19-hour lockdown. So you're in a double man cell, 19 hours a day. You could come out 5 hours a day.
I want to sort of wrap things up, and I'd like for you to refresh me on what it felt like when you went into the first cell, when you were still, before you went to Hondo. We've got images, those of us that haven't experienced it, of a slamming door and a reverberating sound and all that stuff. Is that true?
No, because when I first got into when I got to the intake unit, it was a big tank. It was another what I call criminal summer camp. Where when I got to the diagnostics unit, I didn't get to interact with anybody other than the guy in my cell.
Yeah.
And he was about my size. He was about my demeanor,
Yeah.
and so we got along fine. There was never an issue. When I got to the Torres unit, my first cell, I had a really, I don't want to use the word soft because that's not the right word, but he was a really easygoing cat. An African-American gentleman, not part of my gang system, not part of any gang system, but just really laid back guy. So I never really experienced that whole, at least mentally, that whole door shuts. Oh my God, I'm in this now, because I was just it was moment to moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, most of it really didn't hit me until I was done. When I got out, that's when I realized how impactful that whole experience was on my life. While it was happening, it was just,
You just live it
just live it. That's it.
and survive it.
Yeah. As best you can.
We're going to wrap up this episode. Next time, let's talk about the gang
Okay.
and how that went.
Okay.
And Robert Serna, thank you for your candor.
Well, thanks for having me.
This has been Jim Bratton Podcasts. We hope you have enjoyed, been inspired, informed, angered, or otherwise emotionally stimulated. This is your booth announcer, Sierra Sakel.